Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to being truly well-informed. Today we're plunging into something that, well, it affects everyone, everywhere, the global food market. We're talking about this massive engine, that produces, distributes, and gets food onto our plates, our mission. To unpack the numbers, the trends shaping this vital industry out to 2033, we're using a report from Cognitive Market Research. Global food market, growth projections to 2033. And honestly, get ready, because the scale here is, well, it's pretty eye-opening. Some big shifts coming.
Absolutely. And understanding these projections, it's really more than just industry numbers, isn't it? It gives us real insight into, economic shifts globally, population dynamics, even societal well-being. This dive is about getting clear on a fundamental human need and seeing how its whole economic landscape is set to change.
Okay, let's jump right in then, because the overall figures are just enormous. So back in 2021, the global food market was valued at a, well, staggering $7.46 trillion.
Right. Yeah.
That's already huge. But the projection, it's set to grow to over $9.5 trillion by 2025. And then, get this, it's expected to reach an astounding $15.48 trillion by 2033.
Wow.
To give you a sense of that pace, that's a compound annual growth rate, the CAGR, of about 6.3%.
Yeah.
So the market is basically going to more than double in just over a decade.
It's really fascinating, the sheer magnitude of this. I mean, put it in perspective, $15.48 trillion. Yeah. That figure, by 2033, it would be larger than the GDP of many major economies combined.
Right.
And this isn't just random growth. It's being pushed by these huge forces, a growing global population, for one, plus more urbanization, and, importantly, big shifts in how people eat as incomes rise in many parts of the world. These big drivers, they really set the stage for the regional differences we're about to look at.
And when we talk regions, the ones showing the most dynamic growth, our source points straight at Asia-Pacific. APAC, it's tagged as the undisputed frontrunner. Highest projected regional CAGR, coming in at nearly 7%. Its market value was already huge, around $2.7 trillion in 2021, but it's projected to soar to almost $5.9 trillion by 2033.
Yeah, and if you connect that back to the big picture, APAC's growth is not just population numbers.
Yeah.
This growth really signifies a massive shift in diets, moving from basic grains towards higher value proteins, convenience food,
Right.
even global cuisines.
Yeah.
It's creating totally new market segments, new supply chain demands. Think of it like a culinary revolution, really, driven by economic uplift. And within APAC, China's projected to lead in just the sheer value. Its food market goes from about $1.05 trillion in 2021, over $2.38 trillion by 2033. That's a strong CAGR, about 7.3%.
Okay, and this is where it gets really interesting for me. India. India shows truly explosive growth. Starts around $487.5 billion in 2021, and it's projected to rocket to over $1.14 trillion by 2033. That gives it the highest country CAGR overall. Impressive 7.4%?
0.4%, yeah.
I mean, just think about that. A market growing at 7.4%. It effectively doubles in value in less than 10 years. That's incredibly fast change.
It really is. And as if that wasn't enough, the rest of APAC category, this covers lots of smaller emerging economies. That shows an even higher CGR, almost 9%.
Wow, 9%.
Yeah, going from a more modest $60 billion or so up to over $181 billion. This isn't just, small countries catching up. It strongly suggests that markets that were maybe underserved or fragmented,
Yeah.
they're rapidly adopting modern retail, e-commerce, new food products. Huge opportunities there for innovation in logistics, local processing.
Got it. So huge potential bubbling up there. Okay, following APAC, but still growing really fast, is South America. The report projects its market revenue jumping from around $418 billion in 2021 to over $1.06 trillion by 2033. That's a solid CGR, about 6.5%.
Still very strong growth.
Yeah. And within South America, Brazil is clearly the leader. Its market value is set to rise from $144 billion to over $374 billion by 2033. That's a CGR of almost 6.6%.
Yeah.
And we should also mention Colombia shows a strong KGR too, over 6.6%.
Right. So now moving to the more, let's say, established markets, North America and Europe, they're still absolutely massive in scale, of course, but they show, well, different growth dynamics compared to Asia and South America. North America's food market, valued over $2.1 trillion in 2021, is projected to reach over $4.1 trillion by 2033. That's a CAGR of about 5.8%.
Okay.
In the United States, it remains the largest single country market in the world, growing from nearly $1.68 trillion in 2021 to an estimated $3.24 trillion by 2033, a CAGR of about 5.7%.
Still huge numbers.
Absolutely. And Canada and Mexico also contributing significantly. KGR is around 6.2% and 6% respectively.
So what does this tell us about these, established giants? They're not growing quite as fast percentage-wise as parts of Asia or South America, but their sheer size means even that slower rate translates into massive, massive increases in value,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Trillions being added to the global market. They continue to shape global consumption patterns just by their scale. And Europe, similarly, is a huge market. Total food market revenue there, roughly $1.67 trillion in 2021, projected to grow to over $3.3 trillion by 2033. The CAGR is about 6.1%.
Slightly higher than North America's overall rate then.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
And Germany leads in Europe. It's moving from over $312 billion in 2021 to nearly $659 billion by 2033. That shows a CGR of almost 6.5%.
Okay.
Other big players include the UK, CGR about 6.3%, Russia at 5.6%, France at 5.4%. And it's interesting here, too, the rest of Europe category actually shows pretty robust 6.95% CGR.
Almost 7%.
Yeah, so again, indicating quite dynamic growth outside those major established economies within the region.
Fascinating. Okay, now let's shift focus a bit to the Middle East and Africa. These regions present a different kind of picture in terms of the projected growth rates. The Middle East actually is projected to have the smallest regional CGR at about 4.8%.
Okay, lowest of the regions.
Yeah. Its market value is expected to grow from roughly $355 billion in 2021 to almost $660 billion by 2033. Key players there: Saudi Arabia, projected growth from $136 billion to over $255 billion. CAGR about 4.8%. Other notables are Turkey, the UAE, Egypt. CAGRs are 4.6%, 5.2%, and 5% respectively.
You know, this does raise an important question. Why do we see this lower growth trajectory here compared to other regions? I mean, they have significant populations.
Right.
Our source doesn't really dig into the specific reasons, but it's worth thinking about. Could it be factors like regional economic stability or maybe distinct dietary patterns that are slower to shift towards those higher value foods we talked about?
Could be. It's complex.
Definitely complex. Now, looking at Africa, its food market is projected to increase from around $218 billion in 2021, 0.0 over $421 billion by 2033. That's a CAGR of about 5.3%, so a bit higher than the Middle East. Nigeria leads the continent there, projected growth from roughly $53.8 billion to over $106.5 billion by 2033. Its CAGR is about 5.5%. South Africa also shows significant growth from nearly $94.8 billion to over $179 billion, and CR around 5.2%.
Got it. So still growth, but not at the pace of APAC or South America.
Exactly. So if we try to pull all this vast data together, a few key insights really stand out. First, just the undeniable immense global expansion, the market more than doubling from 2021 to 2033. Food is clearly central to global economics.
Absolutely.
Second, this profound shift in economic power. Asia-Pacific is clearly emerging as an increasingly dominant force, both in consumption and market growth, propelled especially by China's scale and India's explosive growth rate.
Right.
Third, those rest of categories, rest of APAC, rest of Europe, rest of South America. They often show some of the highest CAGRs. This isn't just a blip. It really underscores the dynamism, the untapped potential in smaller emerging economies within those regions. They're modernizing their food systems fast.
That's a really key point.
Yeah. And finally, the data clearly contrasts these high-growth areas with the more stable but still substantially growing established markets like North America and Europe. They continue to add immense value just because they're already so big.
Okay, so you've now got this bird's eye view of how food spending is shifting across the globe over the next decade or so, from those massive established markets in the US and Europe that keep growing to the booming potential in India and other parts of Asia, which are really set for explosive increases. These projections, they offer such a vital lens, not just on consumer trends, but broader economic shifts, opportunities.
For sure. And as we've seen these incredible shifts continent by continent, it kind of naturally leads to a question for you, the listener, whether you're actually in the food industry, maybe an investor, or just curious about how our world is changing. Given these projections, how do you think the supply chain, consumer expectations for food, how will they evolve differently in those fastest growing regions, like India or the rest of APAC compared to the more mature markets? What new challenges, what innovations might emerge from these really distinct growth patterns?
That's an excellent point to chew on, connecting these huge shifting numbers back to the real world, daily life, global economics. We certainly hope this deep dive has given you plenty to think about. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to cut through the noise and get to what really matters. And today, well, we're looking at something fundamental: food. It's obviously more than just fuel. It's this huge, constantly changing global market. It affects geopolitics, your wallet, everything. So our mission really is to unpack what's driving this global food market, what hurdles it's facing, and maybe most interestingly, the trends shaping its future. And just to be clear, all our insights today, they come straight from cognitive market research's analysis.
It's a great topic because food is so personal, right? But the system behind it is incredibly complex, global, interconnected, and understanding not just what's happening, but why it's happening, why these shifts matter. That's crucial. It really touches everything: economics, the environment, social well-being. It affects producers, consumers, everyone deciding what's for dinner tonight.
Absolutely. So, okay, let's jump in. What's actually fueling this massive industry? I mean, yeah, population growth is part of it, obviously. More people, more food needed. But the real story, the thing putting unique pressure on things, it's how rising incomes, especially in emerging economies, are changing what people eat.
That's a critical point, yeah.
You've got millions moving into the middle class, especially in Asia, Africa. And it's not just needing more calories. It's this huge surge in demand for, let's say, higher quality stuff.
Like meat.
Exactly. More meat, more dairy, and also a much bigger appetite for convenience. Packaged foods, processed foods.
Right, and that connects directly to urbanization, which is another huge piece of the puzzle. I mean, think about it. More people living in cities, faster lifestyles. Convenience stops being a preference. It becomes almost essential. So you see this boom in ready-to-eat meals, frozen foods, and of course, food delivery. It's a massive lifestyle shift. It creates whole new market segments, needs totally different logistics.
And it's not just demographics or lifestyle. Technology, wow, that's playing a huge role too, almost revolutionary. We're seeing these incredible advances in what people call agritech.
Right, agritech.
Yeah, I mean, everything from precision farming, using satellite data, sensors to apply exactly the right amount of water or fertilizer, cutting waste dramatically, to, modern mechanization, automation, boosting efficiency like crazy. And then there's crop biotechnology, developing crops that are, say, drought resistant or give higher yields. It pushes what's possible.
Definitely. These tools are significantly boosting yield, production efficiency, making it possible to grow more, hopefully more sustainably too.
Yeah, hopefully.
But like any huge global system, it's not all smooth sailing. There are some major challenges. The data really points to climate change as probably one of the biggest constraints on long-term stability.
It's a big one.
Yeah. You're looking at droughts, floods becoming more unpredictable, more severe, soil degradation, water scarcity issues, this kind of environmental instability. It's a direct threat to food supply chains. Puts pressure on everyone, producers and consumers.
That's a sobering thought. And then there's the just staggering amount of food that gets lost or wasted. Think about this number. Almost 13% of food is lost just between the farm and the shop.
Before it even gets to us.
Right. And then another 19% gets wasted by consumers, by retailers, restaurants. When you look at that level of inefficiency, especially when, millions are still facing hunger, it just highlights this massive systemic problem.
It really does. And that brings us to the supply chain itself. It's incredibly globalized now, which is why it can be so efficient moving food around the world.
But that's also its weakness.
Exactly. That interconnectedness makes it vulnerable, highly vulnerable. We've all seen how geopolitical stuff, pandemics, even just like local shipping problems can send shockwaves through the system, crippling the movement of essential foods. And what does that lead to? Price spikes, shortages for you, the consumer, no matter where you live.
Okay, so we've got the drivers, the pressures, these huge obstacles. Let's shift gears a bit. Let's look towards the horizon, because this is where I think it gets really fascinating. The emerging trends. The innovation happening now is, well, it's pretty amazing. Offering potential solutions. Take, for example, alternative proteins. That's exploding.
Huge growth there.
Yeah, driven by concerns about sustainability, health. People are really embracing plant-based options, even lab-grown meat alternatives. The research suggests this is a massive shift. I saw a projection, something like over $220 billion by 2034. It's incredible.
It's an astonishing number, isn't it? And it reflects a real change in mindset. Another big trend, related in a way, is this demand for clean labels and transparency.
Right, knowing what's actually in your food.
Exactly. People want to know what the ingredients are, and increasingly, where they came from. They're choosing products with simple ingredients they recognize, fewer artificial things. In
Yeah.
fact, the data shows something like, nearly 75% of consumers say ingredient transparency matters when they're buying food.
Hmm.
That pushes producers to be more upfront.
Makes sense. And finally, we have to talk about personalized nutrition. This feels really cutting edge. You've got innovations like genetic testing, figuring out how your specific body processes nutrients, microbiome analysis, looking at your gut bacteria.
hmm Understanding your unique biology.
Right. And then AI-powered wellness apps helping people use that information. Consumers are starting to customize their diets based on their own health goals, their own biology. It's moving past that one-size-fits-all idea towards like truly individual eating plans, functional foods designed just for you.
And what's so interesting is how all these trends, the alternative proteins, the clean labels, the personalized nutrition, they all kind of point back to this deeper consumer awareness. Awareness about health, about sustainability. People aren't just buying food anymore. They're making choices. Choices that align with their values, their desire for more information, more control.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you listening? Whether you're involved in the industry, an investor, or just someone who cares about these global systems. The takeaway seems clear. The global food market is changing, and changing fast. There are huge opportunities, yes, but also significant obstacles. And understanding these shifts, staying ahead of them, that seems key to navigating this landscape.
Which really leads to a pretty important question for all of us, I think. As technology keeps advancing and consumer tastes keep evolving, reshaping what ends up on our plates, how are these shifts going to impact bigger issues like global equity, resource distribution, and maybe more personally, what role do each of us actually play in shaping that future? Something to think about.